Welcome. This is the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping others through real estate investing. Our hosts interview guests from all aspects of real estate investing who generously share valuable experiences and advice. Whether you're starting out or an experienced investor, this is the show for you.
I want to talk just a little bit about long distance investing. I think a lot of people, especially starting out, are probably much more comfortable investing in their backyard, in their own neighborhood, in a place that they know. You mentioned that you knew this area, which I think is a huge benefit, and probably a recommendation I would give to somebody if you are going to invest out of state somewhere you know someone, maybe you lived, or you have some knowledge of that area or some connection that can swing by that property or maybe be your boots on the ground if needed. But what were any of the challenges, or what were some of the challenges of being a long-distance landlord?
Yeah, and a lot of that honestly was learned on the fly. I would say if you're going to do it long distance, to use a manager right off the cuff. I certainly think there's value in being a landlord or a property manager for a time, and that's why for that duplex for the first 2 years, I long distance self-managed it, which is not easy, especially having done zero management before. I had the fortune of acquiring the property with solid tenants, paid fine, took decent care of the place, leases were in place. And so for the first 6-8 months or so, things were easy. It was just, checks in the mail or through Tenant Cloud. But as they say, where I started running into troubles was during those bathroom renovations. Like you said, with real estate being hot, a lot of the good contractors especially were very busy already. And even renovating 2 full baths, they could do better, right? They were doing full house flips. And so who I could find that was available, that appeared to be a decent price, turned out to be a very difficult contractor to work with. And so between issues with them communicating with the residents, between issues on timing, it ended up taking 3 months to renovate 2 small full baths, and some cost overruns, and got in a verbal argument with the younger wife who was a resident there, and just not great. And since I wasn't able to, walk the site and see the progress, and that the residents were maybe afraid to complain, it led to some difficulties. Ultimately, the project got done, but it was definitely difficult. And then certainly in replacing tenants as they start to leave, that becomes very difficult because people want to walk see the unit, which is very fair. But I had to do it, on just Saturday mornings when my dad could be out there to kind of do it as like an open house style, and say, okay, I'll go through and pre-screen 8 people or so. Only about 3 of those end up showing up, and then go from there. And so screening tenants was extremely difficult. Was able to get a pretty good tenant at the end of the day, but again, just such a process. They want to swing by, and you don't necessarily want to tell them you're not there, at least before you get it under contract. For sure. Because then they feel they might be able to get away with more. But exactly. It was difficult. Again, definitely learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and it just shows that when you're caught up against a situation, you always find a way, right? And that's why, like you mentioned before, just get started, because there's so much that you're gonna figure out, and that you can only figure out once you're actually in a deal, as opposed to sitting on the sidelines. So love that. So let's move forward then from that 4-plex to your newly acquired 15 units. How did that kind of transpire?
Yeah. So moving from 4 to the goal for this year of acquiring 8 more units, I knew it was going to be difficult. I've kind of gone up in my full-time career, and so that certainly helps. But getting into 8 plus more units starts getting a little expensive, regardless of where you're at. Fortunately, the 4-plex being acquired so far under sale value was a huge blessing. I mean, my goal through all of this has been just to acquire and hold it for long term. I'm not buying these to flip. I'm not buying these with any kind of speculation on what the market might do. But having gotten it, like you said, 150 plus under value, and it's only cash flowing, 500 to 700 after setting aside for capex and all that every month. My return on equity wasn't great, and so we did end up selling that for $425,000 right at 1 year and 1 day later. Anything under a year would incur short-term capital gains, and so we closed exactly 1 year, 1 day later for $175 over purchase price, and was able to then 1031 exchange that into the 15 unit. The goal was also to sell the duplex, and it was under contract for a while, but the buyer ended up also being laid off like I was just a few years prior. And so with the financing contingency and everything, he was able to get out of the contract, which is fair and everything. But had to get a little creative to be able to meet the close on that, over $1 million 15 unit.
So did you ultimately sell that duplex, or do you still have the duplex as well?
So it's actually under contract now. And actually, by the time you guys are seeing this, it should have been sold.
Awesome. Well, congrats. And probably another, I always call it a bullet. Like I got another bullet to buy another property. So I'm always like, every $50,000 chunk to me is like a bullet for another property. And so I think about it like that. So selling that duplex, you'll be well on your way to 32 with your stacking in the future.
That's the
Vince,
goal.
if you could have done anything differently, in this process, what would it have been? I mean, I think you've done everything pretty well, but looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. What's maybe one piece of advice you'd give our audience of something you do differently?
Yeah, I mentioned that the property management experience was valuable, and it certainly was. But I think I could have avoided a lot of those troubles and stress on myself. The stereotypical 1 a.m. toilet calls by using property management earlier. I had said that the entire time with the duplex, I've been managing it long distance, and that's been a huge part of my growth, but also some of the biggest stresses. And I get, that was taking 2 to 4 hours a week of my time just for those 2 units, just because of the type of area it's in, the type of tenants that it has, and being a 110-year-old building, having some issues. As soon as I secured the fourplex, I immediately had that professionally managed with Josh Utterback of JL Properties there in Sioux Falls. He is awesome. He's part of a group of younger guys that have started this company that started off with just wholesaling. Then they got into property management. They do flipping, and they're just growing super fast and super hungry. And he's actually younger than me, but he knows the area. He knows the contractors. He knows what needs to be done. He's got great communication and takes care of all those little toilet calls and things. And I only hear about things if they're really big and really at the strategic level. Hey, Vince, you've got a couple contracts, a couple leases coming due in February. What do we maybe want to do with those? This is what the market rent is, but we also see XYZ. Kind of gives me all the information, so I only have to make a decision. So that's been excellent, is just moving to property management.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And finding a good one is difficult. So I'm happy you were not only able to find one, but share their contact information with our guests. So, for all you guys listening, if you're in Sioux Falls or looking to invest there, Vince has dropped us a great realtor and property manager. So definitely look those individuals up and contact them if you're looking to invest in the Sioux Falls area. So Vince, I guess I'd like to start or kind of end this main topic with, you have a full-time job. You're a manager, you have 2 kids, you have a wife, and somehow in only a few short years, now you have 15 units. So how many hours a week? You mentioned 2 to 4 hours maybe on that duplex. So are you spending another 20 or 30 on that 15 unit, or how many hours are you spending on that 15 unit now?
No, and between property management and building these systems and this network, it's gone down tremendously. I get one or two texts maybe from Josh at JL on the 15 unit even on the fourplex, honestly, because they handle everything. That, and as you get into a little bit better properties, you do have less issues between better quality tenants, better quality building, the systems that the property management implements. So that the cleaning service that comes in and gets all the shared common areas. The lawn care is already taken care of, so you're not getting anything from the city or anything like that. And so, truly maybe 20, 30 minutes on the existing properties every week, which really opens up that time with family, time to focus on my team at work. And I barely have to think about it. I can focus much more on what that next one is going to look like.
That's so awesome. That's being an investor, right? So many people create a job for themselves when they start investing, and it's kind of what you did, right? You get a duplex, and all of a sudden you had another job. You were the property manager. You were getting those toilet calls. You were dealing with the tenant issues. You were dealing with the contractors not necessarily meeting their deadlines and timelines, and all of a sudden you got bigger. And it got easier. And I think so many people don't realize that's typically what happens, as once you get bigger, you can hire out some of those different individuals. And that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story and kind of your journey so far. And I'm really excited to have you back on and soon when I hear about a 30 or 40 unit here in Sioux Falls.
Hi, my name is Chris Hallam of Simplicity Lending Group and powered by Nexa Mortgage. I'm a trusted and experienced loan officer who will work with you to find the best mortgage options for your needs. From first-time homebuyers to experienced investors, I have a wide variety of loan options and competitive rates, which makes me the perfect choice for those who are in need of creative financing. Contact me today and take the first step towards financial stability.
But now it's time to throw you in the hot seat, Vince. Are you ready?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right, so we ask all our guests 4 final hot questions to help you as a real estate investor. And so, Vince, number 1, what is one book you'd recommend to someone wanting to know more about real estate investing?
Yeah, so the one that comes to mind is maybe not something that a lot of people might say Kiyosaki or different things, but one that I have recommended the most, and one that I send to any cousins or friends or anyone who's maybe graduating high school, graduating college, is Set for Life by Scott Trench. And it's not just a real estate book. Obviously, Scott Trench being the CEO of Bigger Pockets, it's a lot of real estate, but it's kind of how I would do Dave Ramsey's take, right? So instead of all debt is bad and be super frugal, it does focus a lot on frugality, but also, right out of high school, right out of college, or whenever you're starting your career, maybe getting into a house hack, probably being one of the biggest things I wish I had maybe done differently. Instead of buying the big, house for the family, start a little smaller, start with an investment property that you can then move out of after having securing with 0 to 5% down. And then hop and do that a few times before maybe getting the dream house. And then kind of how to move up in your career, changing jobs every 2 to 3 years, coming from someone in HR, change jobs every 2 to 3 years, how to just attack all different areas of life and just set yourself up for a solid foundation.
No, I love it. Love Set for Life, and I follow Scott on a lot of different networks, and definitely someone I listen to and respect a lot of his financial knowledge. I really liked in that book just talking about simple things like stocks that we don't get educated on in school, and how he recommends some index funds and some certain things like that. So great book and great recommendation. Vince, what's your favorite productivity tip or trick, especially in all your data analytics? Is there something like a time saver or an app that you utilize that really helps you save some time?
I definitely love my hacks between connecting systems or certainly quite a bit that we do for work. But probably my favorites are actually travel and credit card hacks. So getting those travel rewards, and I am able to implement it quite a bit in my real estate. I've gone back to Sioux Falls a few times. Well, I've got family in the area. If it's going to be a quick turnaround, or if the weather's bad, it's nicer to stay in town. They're kind of a little bit outside of town. And so I've been able to stay for free. Most of the time I go to Sioux Falls just because of credit card points or hotel programs. I've been able to stay at the Paris Intercontinental LeGrand right in front of the Paris Opera House, which is a $1,000 a night room. I've stayed there for free. I've stayed in Rome and Athens, very affordably, if not free. So that's definitely the big one. And there's all kinds of resources out there for that. Choose FI probably being one of the bigger ones for that. But yeah, I love my points and rewards.
Love that. Yeah, and it's definitely another plus to investing out of state real estate and being able to do some traveling and market research. I hear a lot about when people go out to eat, and I always see people eating desserts. Market research, being able to share with their tenants or their short-term rental guests and things of that nature. Well, Vince, we talked a lot about success, but what's maybe your biggest real estate failure, and what did you learn from that experience?
So going to go back to the duplex. Talked a little bit about screening being difficult, and this is why. So after my dad had showed a few people through the property, I actually wanted to be out there for the lease signing and the walkthrough, and just to kind of get eyes on, make sure this seems like a reasonable tenant and everything. And had this, roughly 40-year-old woman, was going to be, single, had just moved back from Florida after her husband had passed away the year before. Had some troubles in life, but seemed to be getting back on her feet just fine. There were certainly some red flags. Credit score was certainly below 600, probably in the low 500s. Didn't have solid work history, was doing like DoorDash and things like that. But between the sob story and not being a kid, I was maybe a little soft. Again, another reason for property management is these are folks that can just, nope, we're sticking to our numbers. Whereas especially between being in HR, being a softie,
you're too nice.
I was like, yeah, we can make it work. That and because I'm long distance.
Yep.
Yeah, I do. And because I'm long distance, I had to get on a flight like later that day to go home. So I needed someone to be in there, right? Someone to be in there. She ended up having some issues with hard drugs. And between not being able to pay, between certainly not taking care of the property, moving in another tenant, violating the lease, who also didn't help, disturbed my resident on the other side of the duplex. And also because of the people they were having over, police, and I didn't find any of this out until about 8 months later, police were always at the property breaking things up. I had installed brand new garage doors. She ran her car into it. All kinds of just nightmare issues. Everything you hear of of why people don't get into real estate, right? And again, all of that could have been avoided with better screening and likely through local property management. So kind of goes back to why from here on out I stick with my solid managers.
I love it. Yeah, and you definitely learned a lot, but still successful, even with all those hardships. And we'll say it a failure. It wasn't really a failure. It was just a learning process, right? And now you've learned better, and you're going to implement that and improve all your units moving forward. So Vince, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would that thing be?
I think, and this is a tough one, right? But I think just being someone that people trust to go to, whether it's real estate, whether it's a personal situation, being a mentor, being a guide, being a confidant. And in some ways, I'm able to do that for a few people right now. And I appreciate that more than anything, right? Is just being the person that someone goes to when they need advice, because they trust, whether I've been there or not, they trust that I will have the guidance or the resources to help, move them along that path. And then as a kind of a secondary is just someone who lived, right? So the whole purpose of all of this is just to have that financial independence, to be able to be resilient, if anything were to happen in my full-time job, or if I just don't enjoy that anymore, but also to see the world. I want to get to all 7 continents. I've done a little bit of Europe and certainly a lot of the US, but I want to be everywhere, do everything, and take my family along for that journey.
Well, final question, how or where is the best place for our Hot REI community to connect with you, Vince? Probably
the best is going to be Instagram. So Mathis Fam Properties on Instagram, as well as if you have anything directly to inquire about or anything you want to work with me on, management at mathisfamilyproperties.co. That's CO.
Okay, awesome. And we'll definitely keep all those contacts in our show notes so that you guys can reach out to Vince. He's a wonderful guy, and I just want to thank you again tremendously for coming on the show today and sharing your journey. And I think it's one that a lot of people can relate to. Maybe have some imposter syndrome, maybe not sure where you're going to get started. And it's just get started, like you mentioned. You went from a duplex with all kinds of issues, from druggies and a family in there, to transitioning that to a quadplex and now a 15 unit. And you've just learned a ton, and you've had a ton of growth. And I'm super excited for the future and what the future lies for you and your real estate investing career, and looking forward to keeping in touch. Just thanks again for joining me today. It was super fun having this conversation, and I'm super stoked to be able to share it with the world. And to all the audience, thank you guys so much for listening in today. Hope you learned a ton, and look forward to seeing you guys again next time. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Hot Real Estate Investing Podcast. Check out our website, hotrei.com, for additional content and resources. And please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review so we can continue to bring even more value to others through real estate investing.